Matt Cornell is a solo artist as well as a member of Cornell and Carr, and he has appeared in all sorts of other projects, including Adam Brand's Outlaws. He's also been announced to appear at Country on Keppel Festival in July next year, and we're going to chat about that. It'll probably be a short chat because Matt, after singing for 2.5 hours last week, has a little bit of laryngitis. Hello, Matt.
Dave, how are you going? Thanks for having me.
I'm going probably better than you are, given the worn out voice. But I'll start by saying country music on Great Keppel Island, what a brilliant idea. And you have played this festival before. Is it as relaxed and fun as it sounds?
It's probably better than what it sounds. I first got the start. There was obviously a couple of years with COVID and all that sort of stuff. Jasmine Ray was actually booked on the festival the first time round. And then there was issues with borders, and at the last minute I got called in to fill in for Jazz. And when they called me, they said, Jasmine can't make it, we'd love you to do it. And I said, what's the gig? And when they said, it's a festival on a tropical island, I'm like, where do I sign? Yeah. Look, it's quite a unique event because it's the only one that I'm aware of that is a country music festival on a tropical island. And Keppel, it's such an iconic, place. I remember hearing about, Great Keppel Island when I was a kid. And it was actually my first time on the island was the very first time I did Keppel. And then I'm assuming they like what I did because they called me back the following year. I feel like I have it's not just another gig for me now. I feel like there's an emotional attachment. And, Kel, who runs the island, and sadly, Peter Blundell, James's brother, who was a big part of the festival, who's now passed away, very sadly. I feel like I definitely have a connection, and also Beck Gracie, who's the publicist, and James Blundell, who's a big part of the festival. So it's kind of like going back the next year. It's going to be like a reunion for all of us to get back together on the island. This time round, I'm sure you would have brought it up, but Adam Brand is headlining, and he's one of my best mates, and we still work together a lot. And this time round, I'm also going to be playing my 80 show. So really, what's not to like about Country on Keppel?
Well, quite, and I imagine there might be an opportunity for you to jump on stage with Adam Brand too. Not that you could probably give away anything about what's going to happen.
Well, see, I've been part of Adam's band for the last probably 12 or 13 years. So I'm his musical director. I still run all of his, MD, the band and all that sort of stuff. So I'm still very involved with Adam. So when I'm not doing my own shows, I actually play in his band, and we do a lot of stuff together. And it was Adam. The reason I became a country artist was because of Adam. And so we're away this week. We've got a festival down in Cowra. So we still work together a lot. So I will be on stage with him in Keppel, and it's going to be one hell of a time.
Is it hard though to play a set looking at the ocean is just there glistening in front of you? Isn't it a distraction?
Well, there seems to be this myth that men can't multitask, Soph, but I can tell you now, I can look at the ocean, engage the crowd, play my bass and sing, and even sip a beer in between songs. I can do it effortlessly.
Well, there you go. And people, if they want to see that happen, can of course go.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
And now you mentioned playing bass, and you are one of the rare lead singers who plays bass. Sting and Paul McCartney are two others.
Yes.
So have you always been a bassist?
No, my first instrument as a kid, I studied classical piano from about the age of 4 till I was about 8 or 9. My dad he could play a few instruments, but he was also a classical guitarist. So from there, I picked up classical guitar and then gravitated to electric guitar. But it was sort of by chance, I sort of started playing bass, I think around the age of 15. But I think when you find, if I could use find your calling or whatever, but it was the instrument. Like, even though I love playing piano, I love playing guitar, when I started playing the bass, I just became obsessed. I annoy the crap out of my family. I just had this thing, stuck to me 24/7, walking around the house. My family would be watching a movie. I'd be sitting there, slapping away on the bass, and they'd be like, would you shut up? Would you go into another room? And like, I remember missing so much of opportunities and things because I was just obsessed with playing. Like, I had a lot of mates that went through a skateboarding phase. I never did that because I was stuck playing the bass, and that's all I wanted to do. And I've said many times in interviews, I've never had a plan B. It's always been music. My mum and dad were in the industry, so I just always wanted to do music. I never wanted to do anything else.
Well, and that plan A has worked out extremely well, and we'll take you once more back to the island just to bring it back to that subject.
Yep.
And I'm also wondering, being in that festival, if the setting influences your set list. So do you think about putting together a set list knowing that it's a tropical place and people are going to be relaxed and possibly had a few drinks?
There's definitely, I think probably the last time around, there was probably a couple of covers I put in the show. For that reason, but not so much my own songs. I sort of, I've got a repertoire that I know sort of works for festivals and stuff that of my own music that I sort of put in. But yeah, there was probably a couple of covers I put in for memory. This time round, obviously doing the 80s show, that's a whole other thing. So I get to do my own music on the Friday night, and then on the Saturday, it's going to be, it's all hell's going to break loose, I think, on the Saturday night. And you know what? There's something. So if I've always thought, I started doing the fancy dress 80s show. I think I've done it. I've only done it 3 times. I did it twice on Sydney Harbour and just recently up here on the Gold Coast. But what I've found is when people are in fancy dress, they tend to lose their inhibitions a little bit more. And it's like they're in character for the night. I don't know, but I remember when I first floated the idea, probably around 2018. I mentioned it to my mum and a few other people, and they're like, "Do you really think adults are going to dress up?" And I was like, "I think they will." And just a funny thing, the first time I did it with my band in Sydney, they were very reluctant to get dressed, and they're like, "Do we really have to get dressed up?" And anyway, they embraced it on the first cruise, but the second cruise, when we did it, it went from, "Do we really have to dress up?" to, "Hey, you wait till you see what I'm wearing this time." And there was like, we had a chat group of guys saying, "Hey, where can I get leather pants? And I need to get wigs." And it went from, they didn't want to do it to like, going way over the top, which I love. And yeah, I've done the show 3 times, as I mentioned it, and no one has turned up not being in fancy dress. So it's good fun. And I think for the festival, and not just saying it because it's my show, but I think doing the 80s show on one of the nights, it just gives the festival a different flavor. Yeah. They get to see an iconic, mainstream country artist in Adam Brand over the weekend. And there's all sorts of other artists on the bill, emerging talent and all that sort of stuff. But there's something about 80s music that, even depending on your age group, whether you're 20 and your parents have educated you in music and you know what 80s is, or you were a part of the 80s growing up, I find even the demographic we had on the weekend, we literally had from 18 and 19-year-olds to people in their 70s. And every age in between. And there's something special about 80s music. I've said often that the fashion might have been really weird, but the music, it stood the test of time. You've only got to be driving in the car and flick through any FM station. You're going to hear 80 songs during the day. And yeah, I don't know. It's nostalgic for me. I cut my teeth on 80s music growing up as a kid and being heavily influenced by, so many bands. And you mentioned Paul McCartney and Sting in particular, because I ended up sort of being a bass player that sang. I definitely was a massive fan of his. It's not easy to do, play bass and sing. So I used to play a lot of police songs and just sing them. And I think maybe that put me in good stead. Another band I was into at the time was a band called Level 42. And the singer, frontman, Mark King, was an incredible bass player. And I used to learn a lot of the songs and play them. So I don't know, maybe that put me in good stead for many years down the track. But
well, Sting, sorry, go on.
No, you go.
I was going to say, well, Sting certainly made a great career out of being a bass player and a lead singer, although I tend to think towards the later part of his career, maybe he doesn't look as keen about playing bass while he's singing. That could just be me. But just a technical question about that 80s show, because it's a 2.5-hour show, is what you were saying you just played last week. How long does it take to rehearse that?
It's, well, on a personal level, like I do have to do a lot of prep for the show, because it's not just the playing, it's remembering a lot of lyrics. And I think every time I've done it, the first time I did the 80s show, I did it without a female vocalist, so it was predominantly male songs. Second time round, I used a singer in Sydney called Melinda Jackson. She used to be in the Rogue Traders after Natalie Bassingthwaite. Mel's a great friend. And so we put a lot more female songs into the set. This time around, Brooke Supple, who's also a member of Adam Brand's band. She's going to be on Keppel. She's a phenomenal singer. I put even more female songs in the set this time because I just wanted to cater for both sexes. And we hadn't, in the past, I hadn't done Madonna, I hadn't done Cher, we hadn't done Tina Turner and all that sort of stuff. So I wanted to do some of those big songs. But the hardest thing about putting the show together is what songs to leave out, because there's just so many incredible songs. But getting back to your question, the rehearsal, I had one rehearsal with the band on the Wednesday before the gig, and we had 30 songs. And for someone that doesn't know a lot about music or learning songs, that's a lot of songs to learn in one rehearsal. Mm-hmm. So everyone had their work cut out. And then obviously Friday morning I wake up with laryngitis, and it made it so much harder. But it's actually the prepping for an 80 show for me, it's not as big as it would be probably learning another show, because I love the music. Right. But again, playing bass and singing, I have to do a little bit of prep at home, and a lot of the time I've got a little setup here with headphones, and I'll pick my bass up. I'll just be like literally playing along with a bunch of songs and singing, and just sort of getting used to that part of playing and singing along. But there's a fair bit of prep. It's probably more so me than the rest of the band, because they can still have some cheat sheets and some lyrics here and there and whatnot, whereas I'm fully engaged in who's in front of me and mm-hmm. the job of being the front man, but also remembering the lyrics and playing the bass and jumping around like an idiot, and it's good times.
Well, that's good, because I was also thinking, between your show being an Adam show and this 80s show, that's a lot of work over the course of this festival. Do you actually get some time just to relax? I
will during the day, definitely. It's one of those things. I know the last 2 times I've done it, I want to get down and jump in the ocean. I love swimming and that kind of thing. And it's so beautiful. So I will spend my mornings going along the beach and getting some sun and doing what I've got to do. And then, when the night comes, it's all business. But don't get me wrong, even while I'm working, I'll be having fun and sipping on a few cocktails. I mean, I'm on a tropical island.
Yeah.
It'd be rude not to.
And totally rude not to as well, since you're there. But I am getting the impression that if someone bumps into you on the beach the morning of the 80s show, they shouldn't throw in a request, because this show does require a bit of preparation.
Yeah, it does. It's funny. There was a couple of people on the night. Hey, do you play this? It's like, no, and we're not a jukebox. We don't just pull songs out of our ear. But I think the other night the general consensus was, I think we just played such a wide range of 80s music that I think everyone was happy. Everything from INXS to Hall & Oates to Madonna to, just everyone, Police, as I mentioned before, and a lot of Australian stuff, Paul Kelly and Mondo Rock, just, Billy Idol, because I dress up as Billy Idol and all that stuff. So it's look, it's a fun show, and I think too, for Country on Keppel, to have the 80s show, but also people that may not be country fans that hear about Country on Keppel, that they love the 80s and they love dressing up. They may not know much about country. Well, hopefully we can capture those people to come along to the festival that love the 80s, and they get to see Adam Brand and all the other acts that are going to get mentioned and announced for this festival. So yeah, it's quite unique, and moving forward, I'm managed by Ian Dixon, and he's a massive fan of the 80s. And we've talked about moving forward, like I'm sort of relaunching my solo career, because Cornell and Carb are just sort of parking for the near future and focusing back on my solo stuff. But we want to be able to do the 80s show at festivals, because there's no reason why we can't. Because it's what I say, it's a universal language. And it also gives me another outlet to explore in terms of income and doing shows, because I make a living playing music. That's what I do. So if it means I can do an extra 15 shows a year doing an 80s show, well, I'm going to embrace it.
Does that mean we may see the 80s show at Tamworth 2023?
I've talked about it. I've actually reached out to a couple of promoters already, because I'm going to be there. So why not? I know my good mate Liam Brew does a 90s country show, and they dress up, and it's fantastic. He's awesome. So why not do an 80s night and then the 90s country night? I think they'll go hand in hand.
Absolutely. And now I can hear your voices going a bit, so I'll ask you one last question, which is between now and Country on Keppel next year, And with Tamworth in the middle, what else do you have lined up?
Look, a lot. As I mentioned, I'm about to sort of focus back on my solo career. Cornell and Carr, I've done it probably the last 3 years with Mike Carr, and we've had a ball doing it, but it's had its challenges with him being interstate, COVID, lockdowns. It was really difficult. We still managed to release quite a few songs, and we ended up with, I think 3 Golden Guitar nominations. Like, a lot of good stuff came of it, but along the way, I just completely, lost my identity as a solo performer, and it's been 5 years since I've released something for myself. So we're releasing very soon. In fact, the 28th of this month. There's your scoop. So if I haven't announced the date yet, so the 28th, we're releasing this next single, this new single, and I'm excited to get some new music back out there. It's going to sound a little different to my last lot of songs. Dicko wants me to embrace my background, which is a rock musician and the 80s, and there seems to be a flavour of both in this next track. And then, moving forward next year, I'll be releasing quite a few singles next year, and there's some festivals that I'm about to announce on. So you'll hear some sort of stuff in the coming months. But next year, I want to have one of the busiest years of my career so far. I feel like COVID hit me pretty hard. Not just it's hit everyone hard for different reasons, but I really sort of fell into a bit of a heap and really struggled through that period. So I feel like I'm sort of coming back, and I want to work really hard next year and get back out there again.
Yeah, I find the word resilience has been so overused. I suppose the bounce backness of Australian musicians to be just extraordinary and inspiring, actually, that because it would be so easy to just crawl into a hole and say, you know what, those 2 years were so incredibly hard.
Yeah.
And how do we actually get the energy back to put on an 80s show, to go to a festival? But I just see from you and other artists just this determination to get out there and entertain. And a part of it, I guess, is understanding that people need it just as much as you need it. And we all just want to have fun from time to time.
Look, I think it took the lockdowns for a lot of people to really miss music. Again, we take a lot of things for granted in life. And I think with COVID, there were things that were taken away from us, just little things like being able to get in your local RSL club for a snitty and a beer on any night of the week when we're in lockdown, and just little things. But yeah, I think music, it plays such a big role in people's lives, and live music, and not only just bands and artists, but theatre and just everything that falls under that umbrella. It plays such a big part in our lives. So when it was taken away, it definitely had an impact on people. For me, I did fall in a heap for a couple of years, and I just struggled for motivation because I didn't have anything to work towards at the time. I didn't have any music out to promote. It was just in my own personal world, it was a very tough time. But I feel like I'm on the comeback trail, if you want to use that, and very focused for next year, and very optimistic and thankful and grateful that things are moving forward. But it's been the weirdest couple of years. It's like a bad 90s sci-fi film, but it was actually real.
Yeah. Well, as someone who loves Australian music, I'm thankful for you and other artists for coming back and giving us such great tunes to listen to, live shows, and a festival on Keppel to look forward to next year. I will put the website address there. Sorry.
Are you going to come? Are you going to come up?
Well, I don't have plans at the moment, but the way you've talked about it, it's sounding very tempting.
Well, you should, and if you do, you've got to, you got to throw that crimper in the leather pants in the luggage, a bit of glitter. Some fluoro.
Yeah.
And
I have to get some crucifix earrings. I don't know.
I was, there's been some funny things leading up to this show. So a friend of mine, Beck McAdam, she does my merch, and she lent me her mum. Her mum had these really big earrings, and she lent them to me the last time we did the 80 show. So I messaged her the other day and I said, "Hey, Beck, can you please bring your mum's earrings again?" It's like, that's something that I don't normally say to her. And even with my mum, she flew down. I'm like, "Mum, I need you to do my nails and put my makeup on." So look, it's good fun. Beck Gracie, who who's done publicity on and off for me for many years. She helped me tremendously for my 80s cruise. She turned up dressed as Smurfette. She had blue makeup on. Like, it's fantastic. There's just so many people that make such a big effort. So yeah, and I appreciate it when I'm on stage doing the 80 show, and I just look out and see this big crowd, and they're all dressed, everyone from Freddie Mercury to the Blues Brothers to Madonna to, Cyndi Lauper. Just there's all these, crazy out there sort of outfits, and everyone's having a great time, and it makes me feel good.
Fantastic. Well, it does sound incredibly entertaining. So yes, that alone is reason to go to Country on Keppel. But in the meantime, people can keep an eye on your website for your upcoming shows and your new music.
Yes. It's all going on. As I said, we're going to be announcing the name of the single and everything soon. It comes out 28th of October. So watch this space, as they say.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Matt, and look after your throat.
I am. It's still feeling a little bit weak, but it's getting better. I've got a festival in Cowra on Friday, so it's got to be all right for then. So less talking tomorrow. I have another vocal rest day, and it should be okay.
Excellent. Thanks very much.
All right, so see ya.
Yeah.